Well, I was just sharing with somebody that not to make you feel bad, but I actually, for my own information, titled this portion of our little segment, "We're All Messed Up." So I'm putting myself in there too. Not pointing any fingers at anybody, but we are definitely messed up people. We are, because you know what? The kingdom of darkness, that's its entire goal. Kill, steal, destroy. So why not? I mean, he's going to start when we're little babies. And so one of the things that Kim pointed out to me that is a really good tip on when you're doing any of these assessments, especially the one that you're going to do about undervaluing yourself, is to think about if there was any time when you were a child that you remembered feeling a certain way or something happened to you, because most of our brokenness begins, it all begins in childhood. And I can even I have my earliest memories are of being in my big girl bed and having a demon pinch me, bite me, pull me out of bed, pull my hair, hide under the bed. You know all the times you were afraid there were monsters in your closet? Guess what? There were monsters in your closet. You weren't just making it up. It wasn't as big, and I'm not trying to scare you or anything, so I'm not trying to say that. But part of the problem that I had was, yes, those spirits had a legal right to be in my home because they were part of the generational river of mud that the Bible says can go on to the third and fourth generation. But they were also able to be there because my parents it's not their fault, I'm not pointing fingers at them, but they didn't know how to keep our house spiritually cleansed. They didn't know that. Those aren't things that are usually taught, by the way, too often in church nowadays. It's very hard. If you want to learn how to cleanse your home, you have to go to a Wiccan website or to some Native American to come and do the sage thing. That's pretty much what we know of, and then we just go, well, that's not okay, so, throw that out with the bathwater. But honestly, there is a biblical, righteous way to cleanse your home, and it isn't spooky, and you don't have to light candles. And in fact, my husband Timothy Davis, which you all guys all know him, is starting a series tomorrow here called Holy Ground, Spiritually Cleansing Your Home and Property. And it starts here tomorrow, and I want to invite all of you to be here, because I know if you have another church to go to, obviously, but we will have it. If you're not able to come, we will record it, and eventually Denise will get it on YouTube after I edit all the other videos. These videos are going to be on YouTube also, and on Facebook. And so if you know somebody who wanted to be here but they weren't able to make it, I'm going to get this video, there'll be probably 3 videos up on Facebook and on YouTube as fast as I possibly can, so that they can watch them and get kind of caught up. So I'm not going to tell you you're messed up, but I already said it, so we're messed up. But, okay, are you doing okay? We're going to just forge in, and it's going to be the same kind of format. I'm going to do some teaching. We're going to talk about our handouts, and honestly, if you have any questions, any discussion whatsoever, please just write it down, and when we get to that part, we'll definitely take questions. If you don't, that's okay too. You can email me. So, earlier I stated that one of our goals for our time together during this whole 16 weeks is to help you discover answers to these questions. How did I get this way, and why do I undervalue myself? We won't be able to thoroughly explore this today, but I hope to give you some tools to begin the process of uncovering your personal reasons for undervaluing yourself, or why you feel so undervalued by others. Sometimes the damaged, undervalued self can grip us so completely that we can't see our way through the murky mess until some external event finally shifts our perspective and we realize we were significantly, even drastically undervaluing ourselves. And I pray that this is that event that shifts your perspective. And most of us have undervalued ourselves since childhood. Like I was just saying, it's helpful to answer some of your questions by thinking about situations you were in as a child. And by the way, if you don't have any memories of your childhood, there's a really good reason for that. They're not gone. You just can't access them yet. That undervaluing is caused by hurts or defeats we have experienced, and there are several things that can damage us. I talked a little bit about this part when we did our introduction class, but a lot of you weren't able to be here. So if you already heard this and it sounds a little boring, you can take a snooze for like maybe 1.5 minutes. But I'm going to go a little bit more in depth in this. So trauma is one of the things that damages us. What is trauma? When we say someone has a traumatic physical injury, it means the body has lost its wholeness in some way. The skin has been deeply cut, or a bone has been broken, an organ has been injured. But trauma happens to the mind and emotions as well, either with or without physical trauma. It occurs when emotions are not just overwhelming, but in some real sense, they are unbearable. With enough stress and a sense of powerlessness to prevent more stress, the soul loses its wholeness and falls apart, breaks down, or goes to pieces. The soul goes through changes that are equivalent of an injury. Soul trauma can be acute, an abrupt experience, or chronic, something that grinds you down over time, such as what happened to me with this spiritual abuse. It can happen any time in your life, childhood or adulthood, and most life traumas involve other people in some way, usually the most important people in our lives. Someone abandoned us, hurt us, or rejected us. Or during a physical trauma, we feel that a person did not help us or did not help enough. As a result, most traumas automatically lead to the innate defeat response of depression and shame and an overall sense of low self-worth. When a trauma involves an experience so bad that we can't look at the whole thing, the mind breaks it up for us, meaning that we dissociate. Therefore, the whole system doesn't crash. We may separate entire events from our consciousness so that we have no memory of them at all, just like I was saying about a lot of childhood. Or we may separate feelings about a trauma from our memories of it so that we do remember what happened but have no feelings about it, especially if it was an extremely significant trauma, the loss of a parent, the loss of a sibling, something like that. We may not have any feelings about it at all, but we remember it. And then that makes you feel bad because you don't have any feelings about it. Meanwhile, we experience upsetting feelings, including chronic anxiety and depression, for no reason. And we behave in ways that surprise us because we do not see the connection between what we're doing now and the trauma in the past. But let's just get on the same page in regards to the definition of the soul, because we are from different backgrounds and we've kind of all heard a lot of different things. So this is this diagram that if you've ever gone through the cleansing seminar, this is the diagram that we use to describe what the soul is. Well, not just the soul, but the body and the spirit. The whole person. This is the whole person. Okay. So the black circle on the outside represents the body. So we all know we have a body. The soul are the 3 circles in the middle, and they in the yellow, and they represent the parts of us that make up our thoughts, our feelings, and choices. The Greek philosopher Plato called the 3 parts of the soul the logos, which is the mind or reason, the thymos, which are emotions, and the eros, which are your desires and your choices. The New Testament often interchanges the words heart and soul, but they generally mean the same thing. If you know Greek, you have to kind of dive into the Greek to find out that it's saying the same word. The soul is the seat of our thoughts, our desires, our purposes, understanding, intelligence, character, and will. The spirit, which we have red in the middle, represents our spirit, the very red dot. And that's red because it's a born-again person and they're covered in the blood. Our spirits are the centers of our identity. They are quite independent of social conditioning, personal experience, and character. The soul is the connector to the spirit and the body. It's as if it has 1 foot in the spirit and 1 foot in the body and connects all of that together. The spirit and the soul are the things that live on eternally after our bodies are deceased. When we experience emotional trauma, where do you think the damage occurs? The soul. The damage creates broken parts. I'm going to use that term a lot. This whole time that we're together, I'll use the term broken parts a lot of the times. Psalm 147:3 says, "The Lord heals the brokenhearted and binds up their wounds." It literally means the Lord restores the shattered soul. If you look into the Hebrew of that, it means the shattered, broken into smithereens soul. He puts back together the broken parts of our mind, our emotions, and our will. So what are broken parts? They are the little you at the moment of the trauma impact. They hold all the memories, feelings, and actions of that event. So if you were 2 or you were 12, they are perpetually that age that you dissociated from the trauma. To add salt to the wound, a repetition of a trauma or an additional trauma soon after the first can more than double the distress you experience because the first made you more vulnerable to the effects of the next. That's kind of a pain. Remember my story that I shared about my childhood? I mean, we all agree that was trauma? Repeated trauma. Well, every single one of those incidents broke another little part of me, out of my soul. Then the spirit that broke it was able to torment that broken part. This makes broken parts of our soul the most valuable commodity to the spiritual realm, the kingdom of darkness specifically. I kind of just introduced a new topic, which I'm not going to dive into right now because it's a much bigger topic than a 5-minute conversation, but we will talk about that later. Another major factor in causing trauma to our souls is shame. We talked about shame just a little bit ago, and we will talk more about it in depth later on as we keep going because it's kind of a big topic. But I wanted to mention it again to include it in the causes of bringing brokenness so that you know that shame and trauma go together. But people were created by God to have an overall sense of self-worth. God was originally the source of our self-worth because our worth and worthiness flowed directly from Him in the beginning before Adam and Eve sinned. Once they sinned, then God's Spirit left them, and shame and self-hatred took the place of worth and value in their souls. We see that throughout when they were striving then to do anything, which is why even though it was a curse that was pronounced upon them, the one thing that Adam was good at and was created to do was to tend the garden. And then God said, guess what? Now, without your worth and your value coming from me, you're going to strive to take the land, and you're going to deal with thorns and thistles, and the land's going to be harsh to you. Self-worth is the internal sense of being good enough and worthy of love and belonging from others. Self-worth is often confused with self-esteem, which relies on external factors such as successes and achievements to define worth, and can often be inconsistent, leading us to feel unworthy, especially if we have a failure, which is why we aren't wanting to be vulnerable, because we don't want to put ourselves out there, so we don't want to fail, and then we feel unworthy, and right? The cycle goes on. We live in many different types of groups: family, friends, colleagues, teammates. Shame triggers the undervalued and damaged self through personal losses and defeats. Its goal is to cause us to believe our worth depends on our successes and achievements within these groups. Another cause of trauma to our souls is self-hate. Usually when I say that, people go, I don't have any self-hate, I love myself. As with shame, I want to give you a general overview of what self-hate is and how it works. But we will dive into this hideous schema later on in our studies. And now I just threw out another word, schema, but a lot of you might know what that means. because it is an excellent term, though, to describe how self-hate works. A schema is a mental framework that helps us organize, process, and store information about our environment. These mental structures, that's a very key right there. These mental structures are essential for understanding the complexities of the world as they allow us to interpret new experiences through the lens of pre-existing schemas. But here's how self-hate schema works. Self-hatred uses whatever and whomever to destroy our self-image, distort our perception of how others view us, and ultimately drive us to physical exhaustion or destruction. It uses your thought processes all the time. That's why I called it a schema, because it's very intricate. This system is methodical and will take its time, even our lifetime, to accomplish its goals. And even though it is set up by the kingdom of darkness, it literally comes down to broken parts hating on other broken parts. Self-hatred is far more aggressive than self-rejection and is overtly destructive. Not only is it emotionally and physically abusive, but it is also masterful with memory recall. When it partners with anger, pain, and trauma, it will viciously attack us inwardly. The trick is that long ago, self-hatred convinced us that all thoughts were only our own and not influenced by anyone else, including the spiritual realm. It goes something like this. It's your fault that life has turned out badly for you. You played, you pay. Satan tempts. That's his job. You can't even blame him for this mess you're in. Nobody forced you into sin. You can't expect God to bail you out. After all, it's a law. You reap what you sow. It's really good at using the scripture, by the way. You're self-destructive. Even if God cleared a straight path for you, you would screw it up. You can't be trusted. You're a waste of oxygen. You're a worthless piece of flesh. And that's a nice word because it's usually not the word. I bet none of you have those kinds of thoughts, do you? Is it just me? I'm sure that you are all very excited to uncover these particular parts of the damaged self. But I wanted to point out some of the main catalysts the enemy uses to break our souls into pieces, because these broken pieces are the undervalued self. Jesus is the most interested in rescuing them. As we progress in our studies, our goal is to help you uncover these broken and damaged parts and then partner with Jesus to recover them and to bring them to perfect wholeness. In the Hebrew language, shalom, you've heard the word shalom. I always thought it was mostly just a hello and goodbye, kind of like aloha means hello and goodbye. Shalom. Shalom means this. It means peace, nothing missing and nothing broken. This is the perfect will of the Father for all of us. Nothing missing, nothing broken. Just like the song that we sang a little bit ago that made me cry off my makeup. You picked up all my pieces. When I thought I lost me, you knew where to find me. You picked up all my pieces, reintroduced them to your love. It's what he's so good at. It's everything that he can do for every one of us. The deepest, darkest part that persecutes you day and night. We'd like it to be a demon all the time, but guess what? It's a lot of times just me. Just parts of me that are sad, lonely, hateful, angry, bitter, want to get out of this life. I wasn't going to say this, but I will. If you go to bed or put off going to bed every night because you're thinking, I got to get up tomorrow. I just don't want to get up tomorrow. So if I don't go to bed tonight, then I don't have to get up tomorrow. Yeah, that's a good idea. There's probably some undervalued stuff there. There's probably some self-hate stuff there. I mean, this was the way I have had thought for a lot of years. I don't want to go to bed. Well, part of it, I didn't want to get tormented either. But that wasn't the main part. It was I didn't want to wake up tomorrow morning. So, all that being said now, let's talk about our handout number 2, which is assessing your childhood traumas. Doesn't that sound fun? I'm going to kind of read just part of it, but you're going to do this all by yourself. And I do want to give you a little explanation. There's a part where on the third page, it shows you kind of a sample of how this other person's childhood trauma list went. And there are adult traumas, but we're going to just work on the childhood ones at first. But on the back, I made you like a really big chart, just in case you have a lot of them. Because I figured there's no way anyone's going to be able to write in that tiny little 1-inch box or half-inch box. So, well, actually, I don't know that I need to read all of this, because I just said most of that. So what you're going to do is you're going to go through these and mark. Let's see what she says. This is Dr. Aaron tells us to do, is to read them. Okay, Kim, help me with this for a second, because either I didn't give you any instructions, or I'm mixing something while I'm looking at. Under the charting your childhood traumas? Oh yeah, place a check on the third page. Place a check mark in column 4. Oh, it starts at the bottom of page 2. Using the chart, I promise you that I typed this whole entire thing up myself. And using the chart below as a guide, fill in the childhood trauma chart for yourself. Write down the traumatic events in column 1. Place a check mark in column 2 if this event occurred before you were 4, or in column 3 if it happened before you were 12. If it occurred when you were 2, you would check both columns since it happened before you were 4. And obviously also before you were 12. A younger age is thus weighted more by having check marks in both boxes. Okay, so that's just telling you how to do that. What I did when I went through the childhood traumas is, because she's just giving you a lot of different types that there are, I just sort of made a check mark next to any of them that were me, so that I could then write them over here. But not all the traumas are going to be in this little list. I'm sure that a lot of you have experienced things that maybe no one else in your entire life or any other human being has ever heard you tell, ever knew anything about. We met a man who we were having a counseling appointment actually with he and his wife for a completely separate issue, and somewhere in the middle, unrelated to anything we were talking about, he said, well, I just need to tell you, when I was 8 years old, I was raped by a teenage boy, and I have never told anyone this before. And she's been married to him for over 30 years, and she's like, oh, okay. So sometimes we are compelled to be able to say the thing that is the worst thing, when all of a sudden we have this much hope that we're going to be able to get healed from it. So I just want to encourage you that it might be a little hard to really face these and to read them and to acknowledge, yeah, that did happen to me. But it doesn't have to be emotional. You can do it non-emotionally. You can completely dissociate and read it as pretend like it's not about you if you would like. Do it however you need to. But we will use this chart later on, even if it seems like an insignificant trauma. If it's even anything like what she's saying on here, go ahead and write it down anyway, because right now it might not seem like it's that important. Correct? Is that what you were saying? But it will eventually. It'll come out later. They're all pieces of a puzzle, you guys. They're all pieces of your beautiful soul, and it's like a jigsaw puzzle. And this piece, have you ever done that with a jigsaw puzzle? You're like, I don't even think this piece goes into this puzzle because it doesn't look like anything anywhere else. And sometimes we have broken parts like that. They seem like they don't fit into me anywhere, but I promise you that they do. And so sometimes we just have to get through the heavy timber to find them and figure out where they go. Absolutely. Praying before you start, definitely, and asking the Holy Spirit to bring it to your mind. Sometimes you'll have a memory that you hadn't thought of since it happened to you, whatever it was, and all of a sudden it's like, oh my goodness, that's like that happened yesterday. And I want to say, if you got injured, I think this is actually somebody in here. You were injured when you were little, and nobody really took care of you. They didn't, number one, they didn't think the injury was that significant, and so they kind of played it off, which was hurtful because it was a painful, whatever it was. It can just be a scuffed up knee. But if you didn't get the care of somebody saying, oh my goodness, I'm so sorry that happened to you, let me help you, it sounds insignificant, but it can create a trauma, a place where you were just broken, a little piece that got broken off that says, well, I guess I don't matter. I guess my pain doesn't matter. And I want to tell you something about how self-hate works. And I'll close my eyes when I say it. Does anyone in here have a very high pain tolerance? I mean physical pain. Yeah. Guess what? That's because of self-hate. It isn't just because you are neurologically built this way. We learn how to numb our pain, right? We don't want to feel it. And the more we numb it, the more, I see you in the back. The more we numb it, the more we don't feel it. You can actually go through, look at us women, okay? We go through childbirth without pain medication many times. And that's because God, I really believe that's a great, gracious gift that God gave to us, that He took care of us that way. But if we have consistently, you can have an ingrown toenail for 3 months. Now the doctor wants to cut your toe off, and he says, well, didn't it hurt? And you're like, no, I don't feel anything. Because why? We have numbed it out for so long that self-hatred just can keep piling more and more on you so that you just hate yourself more. He's like setting you up to hate on yourself more and more and more. It's really mean. That's just how the kingdom of darkness works. It's really mean. So thank you, Lord, that you know exactly how much to bring up at the right time, and I just say yes to Him when He does.